Hello, welcome to another Tonalist landscape oil painting demonstration. This is your painter in residence. I'm Francis McCarthy, and the painting I'm bringing you today is by Camille Corot. I should say, welcome as well to the Past Masters series. This is 15. Things have got a little weird, a little convoluted because I've done some back and forth or what have you, but this is a study after Camille Corot. The title I have is Landscape. He probably had some fancy French title. You can't always find titles. He was very prolific, and not only was he prolific, but there were a lot of Camille Corot imitators at the time as well. So, and some of them are pretty easy to spot. Some of them are actually not straight up imitators, but people that are influenced by him. And I've done some studies after one guy. His name's escaping me. I've done a couple who I thought was really an amazing painter. But Camille Corot started quite a lot of what we consider to be the Barbizon movement, which became the tonalism movement in the United States. So he's a foundational dude. He was a big influence on George Ness and many other painters, of course, but George Ness and others brought many of the best aspects of the of Corot's style to not just style. It's actually more than just a style. It's a way of thinking about landscape that sort of eschews specific detail in favor of a more kind of amorphous sort of approach. And this came in to the United States, where what was very popular was the Hudson River School, also known as the Luminists. They would do this beautiful, usually very large format paintings of the American landscape, and they were called the Luminists because of the incredible glowing skies and things and certain effects they would do. But one thing they would also do would be to kind of delineate the entire scene with incredible amounts of detail. And these paintings are amazing. They're impressive. I've seen there's a at the De Young Museum in San Francisco, they have a whole wing dedicated to American landscape painting from this era. They have a few tonalist pieces there, but pretty much dominated there by the Hudson River guys and people like Albert Bierstadt, probably a few other names that could come to me in a minute. But either way, Corot's influence coming over from Europe into America was this kind of an interesting thing, because there was a lot of people that were saying, well, American painting for Americans. And they didn't want the European influence, but someone like Ines come in with that European influence, and he paid a price for that early on. People didn't dig it, but as it turns out, it was a good move, because it was an evolution of landscape painting, and to ignore that, I think Ines would have been foolish, and anyway, it caught on big time. And why did it catch on? Well, because when you pull back on the detail, you leave a lot more room for emotions. You leave a lot more room for the person looking at the painting to kind of fill in the blanks, so to speak. And you're setting the tone, you're setting the mood, but you're not delineating everything. So, and that's a really a good move, I think, because when you have everything delineated, a person has to scan the painting very much like they scan the world, which is, about if you put your hand away from your face about 1.5 feet and make a 1.5 inch circle with your thumb and your forefinger, that's about how much of reality you see in focus at any given moment. But you're constantly scanning and building a focused picture in your mind. And we do it all the time. It's it's not effortless, though. This is the thing. A painter, I don't think you really want people looking at your painting like that, unless that is your particular, bag. And like I said in previous videos, I have seen painters that use extensive amounts of detail do amazing work that was really good and moving, although to me not so much in the way that I want to work or what I want to, not the sort of feelings I want to stimulate, but it can be done. For me, when I came across tonalism, it was the emotional quality that drew me in more than anything else. Now, the other art movement that sort of grew out of Camille Corot was the Impressionists, and they also would subsume a lot of detail in favor of capturing direct lighting effects from nature and also doing very tricky things with modern pigments that were available. So they had much brighter pigments than the masters and could pull off a lot of light effects, and that to me is sort of what defines Impressionism from tonalism. In fact, in America you had many painters that were working in both modes, and there can be an overlap as well. Although at the end of the day, I think that Impressionism is more tied to a sort of plein air approach. It's tied to observing light effects in nature and doing your best to get them onto the canvas. It's almost a scientific approach to painting, whereas tonalism is a more poetic approach. You can get your inspiration from nature, and maybe it's a sunset or something. You can't do an impressionist painting of a sunset, not very easily, because the light's changing so quickly. You can maybe make a little thumbnail sketch or something, but which is a lot of times what the tonalists might do. They might make a very small sketch, and then they would bring it into the studio and expand it into a larger painting. And there's a lot more invention involved with tonalism, a lot more poetry, a lot more subjective, a lot more of a subjective approach to the landscape, because although nature was the initial inspiration, it really becomes about the artist and the paint and the studio. And this is where I'm at. This is what I like to do. I have done plein air painting, and I recommend that any of you that are painters that want to get better, take a crack at it. It will get you better in a hurry, because you need to move fast, and moving fast is important. Now I don't paint as fast as these videos go, but I lay my colors down in a pretty quick manner. You don't want to chew things over. You want to keep moving and keep things fresh. That's really important. That's maybe a topic for a whole nother video. But getting back to Camille Corot, so if you look at his older pieces, they were a lot more detail, a lot stiffer. And as he progressed, what he really brought into his landscapes was a feeling of airiness, and he's actually never really been rivaled for that as far as guys that get air up into the trees. I do my M. Francis McCarthy approximation of his effect in a very quick way, but I have seen his paintings in real life at the Louvre in Paris, and I have to say that the way that he got it across was by using many small strokes of varying different colors and shades in the areas where the trees overlap the sky. So he's bringing in some tree colors, he's bringing in some of the sky, and the end result is he uses very many small strokes, and he gets this airy quality that's incredible. And really, to me, the defining, it's one of the defining aspects of his work. To me, the other defining aspect of his work is his strong use of shadow, in some cases very strong. And you can see that in the study we're doing here. There's like a lot of shadow in that tree mass, and quite a bit on the ground as well. And his contrast can be quite stark at times. Not as stark, say, as a graphic approach, but pretty dark. And he's a guy, of course, that's using actual ivory black. And coincidentally, one of the reasons, I think I mentioned this on my last Corot, I think I put up maybe a few months back. One of the reasons my Corot studies really, I think, work very well is I believe that he was working on a ground color the same as I am working on, which is like a burnt umber. I think Ines favored more of a burnt sienna, ideally, although at the end of the day I think Ines could paint over anything. He was always painting on top of not just his old paintings, but his friends' old paintings, or his friends' new paintings for that matter, and his son's work. And in those cases, he'd just be working opaque. He'd just be painting over the top of someone else's thing, you know. So the ground color might not be so critical, but when you see what I've done here and you compare it to the Camille Corot, what I'm not doing is tons of tiny little rice grain strokes to get this sort of tree effect that he would get. But what I'm doing is I'm getting like an approximation of it by hitting the color notes, you know, which is going to be a color that's something between the sky color and the tree color. So it's going to go gray. You know, if it's green, you're going to gray up the green and blue it up and bring it into the tree mass, you know. Now, one thing I think you're going to see in this, he had a little sky hole, which it works in his painting, and I don't think it works as well in mine. I've been resisting it because one thing I've learned with we're getting close to the end of the video, but I've got enough time maybe to talk about sky holes. I've talked about sky holes before. Sky holes are so critical to your work if you're a landscape painter. The number one thing that most amateurs do is they put in too many sky holes. You're better off with one or none. And if you're working off a photo reference, you're going to see a zillion sky holes. You need to ignore almost all of them if you want to do a good painting. That's just a tip from me to you, gratis, as is all of the information here. Happy to help you out. Now, actually, you see this little section of the painting I'm doing now, there's probably a little figure there. And Corot would always say, see, I just put in the sky hole. And I really liked the painting better before. But however, since it was a study, and his, I'm going to make it a little stronger, I believe, and his was quite strong. Another thing about this painting is it's all in one pass. I didn't do a second pass in this one. I looked at it, I thought about it, and that's why you can see it's only sped up about maybe 5 times faster than I actually painted it. No second pass, because I looked at it and I thought, that looks all right. I did my study, and it looks like a Corot study, and I'm happy. So I didn't see any reason to overwork it and take it any further. Anyway, getting kind of close to the end here. Well, thanks for joining me on this day 15 of the Past Masters. If you like my Corot study, go over to my channel to the playlist section. There is a pretty extensive playlist there. I think I've done like, I don't know, 40 Corot studies over the last 4 or 5 years. So you could just sit there and binge on that and maybe get a pot of coffee or something and watch all of them. I don't know. Pot of coffee and a pizza. Anyway, I'll be back midweek next week with one of my paintings. And meanwhile, please take good care of yourself and your family and stay out.